And we're live, rounding up the news. I've kind of drifted away from talking about the news on this channel, and every now and then on the real news, they'll have a slow news day when there's nothing much to talk about, and they'll talk about some boring local story that doesn't really mean anything to anyone. So maybe this is a slow news day for me, and I've got nothing else to talk about, so I've resorted to talking about the news. And good evening, Jen Wallace. And for us, it's good morning. It's actually, it's about to be 9:11 in 2 minutes. Yeah, we're 2 minutes away from midnight on the 10th of September. That means 9/11 is 2 minutes away, the day that everything changed. So we'll be talking about that in the news. Maybe tomorrow I'll actually do a dedicated 9/11 special, so we can all remember where we were that day. A day that Jen Wallace will never forget. Yeah, it's certainly etched on the minds of a lot of people. Good evening to Mr. Rax, who's in the chat. That's an honor to have him here. Yeah, 9/11. I live 2 hours from there. So I guess you live in New York State, perhaps. That's it's a large state, I believe. Mr. Axe, absolute pleasure to have you tuning in. Yeah, that was a huge news day. It was madness. Okay, you're in Connecticut. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Connecticut. Can never get my tongue around these American state names. But yeah, that was the day that changed everything. And Donald Trump famously told us that he would reveal the truth about what happened on 9/11. That was one of his promises, remember? Along with the wall and along with Hillary going to jail, he told us that he would find out the truth about 9/11. But he didn't find out anything. I was really looking forward to visiting Hillary Clinton in jail and telling her what really happened on 9/11. And Jen Wallace is saying he's a demon. Well, he's done a lot of bad things. He promised to do some good things, and I think sending Hillary Clinton to jail would have been a good thing. But in the end, he said he didn't want to do that because, as he described, the Clintons were decent people. Yeah, okay. The Clintons are decent people. But he has done a decent thing. Donald Trump did a decent thing today, and John Bolton, the National Security Advisor, former National Security Advisor, has been fired. Donald Trump said his famous slogan once again, "You're fired." And he said it to John Bolton, who tried to wriggle out of it, tried to claim that he was stepping down. He tried to jump before he was pushed, but Donald Trump has fired the man that he never should have hired in the first place. An absolute evil man, a war hawk, if ever there was one. And I saw John Bolton in Brussels, must have been about 10 years ago. He was still at it back then, and he's been at it for a long time, warmongering. We went to a conference in Brussels organized by the MKO, the Mujahideen Khalq organization, a terrorist group from Iran who are opposed to the Iranian government, and therefore, by the neocons' logic that my enemy's enemy is my friend, John Bolton was pitching up at their conference. And the MKO are a strange bunch. And I have to say, I went on this trip to Brussels on a coach overnight, ferry there and back, absolutely free of charge. And I wouldn't have gone otherwise. But where do a group like this get these funds to be able to pay for me and a bunch of other people who might not have any clue about what they're really about to go and fill up a room so you've got a nice packed crowd for a conference in Brussels? It was very strange. And they still write to me now, the MKO. Could you send us money? Here's an update on what we're doing. And honestly, I want nothing to do with them. But they've got my number and they seem to be trying to contact me. So you wonder where groups like this get their money from, get their funding from. They were displaced from Iran and sent to, or they fled to Iraq, and they stay in a place called Camp Ashraf, which is where they operate out of, and they are a thorn in the side of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and that's why the likes of John Bolton would be in favour of them. And the whole day was a very strange setup. There were like propaganda cartoons being played in the background on a projector, sort of lampooning Ahmadinejad, who was the president of Iran back then, and portraying him as Hitler in a cartoon. And the irony must have been wasted on these propagandists, because it was Hitler and the Nazis who used to lampoon people and ethnic groups by portraying them in cartoons. So yeah, that was a strange time. And also in the news, in other news, although related, Hezbollah have downed an Israeli drone in Lebanon. So the Israelis have continued to breach Lebanese airspace, and Hezbollah, the Iranian-backed Shia Islamist militant group in Lebanon, are they a terrorist group? Well, officially they are now, but that's only been the case this year, that the British government finally decided that all wings of Hezbollah are to be declared a terrorist group. So they've downed an Israeli drone over Lebanese airspace. And Hezbollah, the only Arab army ever to inflict a defeat on the Israeli army on the battlefield, get a strange reception in the Muslim and Arab world. And Hezbollah literally means the party of God. Allah obviously means God. Hezb is the party. So Hezbil Ba'ath are the Ba'ath party, the ruling family and political party in Syria, and formerly in Iraq, although that was a different wing of the Ba'ath party, another one of these factions that split into another faction, divide and conquer, continues. So you got Hezbollah Ba'ath, Hezbollah, the party of God. Hizb ut-Tahrir is another Hizb or party that you might be familiar with. They're a sort of Sunni Islamist Salafist group, you could say. So Hizb just means party, but I hear the term Hizb Shaitan, the party of Satan, thrown around by these, I have to say, sectarian fools who are yet again falling for the divide and conquer and referring to Hezbollah, a freedom fighting resistance faction from Lebanon that fights only against aggressors in its own country, and then headed to Syria and was one of the final groups, armed factions to arrive in Syria, to defend the government in Syria. And of course, were it not for the French and the British and the Sykes-Picot Agreement, Lebanon would have been part of Syria. To Syrian nationalists, Lebanon is part of Greater Syria. And I was pondering on the name recently of Lebanon, and I would imagine it comes from the English, or the English equivalent would be Levant, Levant, Lebanon, Lebanon, which is actually referring to the whole of Greater Syria, which would include Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, and Jordan. And when ISIS referred to themselves as, or were referred to as ISIL, it stood for the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant, rather than ISIS, Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. Jen Wallace is saying, I feel so out of touch with world news. I tend to withdraw myself from worldly issues because they are so depressing. Well, they can be depressing. I think we should try to be informed about the world. But then again, what is the point? If we can't sort our own problems out, why are we getting bogged down with other problems in the world? And one of the few good things about Trump, possibly, might have been that he would have butted out of foreign interventions and been a kind of a stay-at-home president, and gone down the non-interventionist route, which America was like in the early part of the 20th century. And that might have made America great again. Wouldn't it have been great if America had stopped intervening in foreign wars, stopped stirring up foreign wars, stopped backing foreign militants and sending them to do their dirty work for them? Jen Wallace is saying he invited the Taliban to Camp David. Did he really? Well, maybe he wanted to sit down and have a chat with them. And Jen Wallace is asking, when was America really great? I don't know. Maybe his slogan should have been Make America Great, but it might not have been so catchy. Make America great, or just make it great in the first place. So when he said draining the swamp, that would have been a hopeful remark to make. And the fact that he has got rid of Mr. Bolton, that's a good thing, but he should have never hired John Bolton in the first place. So is it really progress if you take 2 steps backwards and then take 1 step forward? I don't know. And Jen Wallace is saying he cancelled the meeting because they killed a US Army man in Kabul for leverage over the meeting. Yeah, well, look, the Taliban are, and it's easy to say this in hindsight, they are only any force in Afghanistan because the American policy of my enemy's enemy is my friend. The Mujahideen in the 80s were armed and trained and set upon the Russians, the Soviet Union. And Osama bin Laden in the British press was portrayed as a holy warrior. Even Rambo was out there in Afghanistan helping the Taliban. Can't believe it. And Jen Wallace is saying 2 days before 9/11, you would have had them there. America's livid right now. Okay, well that's a important news story, and thank you for bringing it up. But it all comes down to the same principle of interventionism. It is not working for America. It is not helping America. And are these wars really for America? 33X is saying Rambo should be arrested. Arrested for what, 33X? Well, perhaps that's because he was but because he fought against the Russians, or because he went back and then I think they're trying to make a new Rambo film where he fights against the Taliban, because Hollywood just reflects the zeitgeist, doesn't it? In the 1980s, in another Sylvester Stallone classic, in Rocky IV, the villain is a Russian. If Rocky IV was made, or if a similar film was made now, the enemy. Well, funny enough, it's come round again. Russia is the enemy yet again. We've had the Islamists were the enemy for a while, and Bin Laden, and it was terrorism this, terrorism that, terrorist. Osama bin Laden is a terrorist, so we need to invade Afghanistan because he's hiding there. Oh no, wait, Saddam Hussein is a terrorist supporter. He's helping Al Qaeda, even though Saddam Hussein was the absolute opposite end of the spectrum in terms of what Al Qaeda follow. Saddam Hussein was a pan-Arab nationalist and would have imprisoned the likes of Al Qaeda. 33X makes a very good point, saying Creed should not have died in Rocky IV. Well, as Ivan Drago says, if he dies, he dies. What a cold-hearted Russian. It was a really great way of portraying Drago, and by implication, Russians, as being cold-hearted, cold-blooded. And Jen Wallace is saying facts. Yes, we do like to share the facts on this show, and we like to share opinions as well. And I think opinions are perhaps more important than facts, because I can pluck any fact out of the internet. If it happened, someone has probably written it up, but what does that event actually mean? And I say this very often in dialogue with Zionists. Very often we will agree about what happened, but we will disagree about whether or not it was justified. And 33X thinks that the death of Apollo Creed in Rocky IV was not justified. Pleb Enforcement is asking, what do you teach? Well, originally religious education, but I've dabbled in various different things. Done a lot of PE recently. 33X saying, disagree, by the end of Rocky IV, Russians were seen as good-ish people. Yes, because they had turned their back on their leader and they were applauding the American. So a good Russian is a Russian who likes an American and who applauds capitalism and this idea that if you work hard, you can get anything you want in life, because capitalism is a meritocracy. So it was a good bit of propaganda. I do like the Rocky saga more for its sporting content. Not that it's any kind of realistic representation of what a boxing match should be. Usually the sound effects sound like someone smashing up a car with a baseball bat, but it's all good fun. And 33X shares the best quote from the whole film, which comes right at the end when Rocky says, if I can change, and you can change, everybody can change. Yeah, that's my Stallone impression. So yeah, there's always going to be propaganda and themes coming through films, whatever the zeitgeist is at the particular time, whoever they're trying to demonize. And Jen Wallace has very kindly given me 10 out of 10 for the impersonation. Thank you very much. I do try. I can do others, but maybe we'll have a impression night. Pleb Enforcement saying someone's been to the barber. Oh, thank you very much. Yes, I could never achieve that myself. So, other news, and this is kind of not really world news, but news that was sort of personal to me. A channel that I used to watch a lot, a chap called Morris, and his YouTube name was 108 Morris 108, and he was an independent journalist who'd taken himself off to live in Malaysia, and he was living out there the only foreigner for miles around, living off donations sent to people via PayPal, and he had his own sort of take on the news. And I came back to click on his channel the other day, only to find out that it has been disappeared. Now, Morris had some very controversial opinions. He would be, much like myself and all the others, regarded as a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist. And I just wonder what he said in order for his channel to be removed. And will he reappear? This is the censorship coming from on high. And 33X is saying, I love Morris. Were you familiar with Morris, 33X? Were you familiar with his work? Pleb Enforcement wants an example of his controversial views. Well, some of his views, I think, could have been misconstrued as anti-Semitic, because Morris would criticize various Jewish people, and at times perhaps would sound like he was criticizing Jewish people as a whole. However, his theory was that the Jewish identity, as he put it, was just an invented identity, and that there is no such thing as being Jewish by blood, and the idea of being a Jewish person by heritage is a complete myth. Now, whether that borders into the realms of anti-Semitism, perhaps it does, but he was always, I think, fair in what he said. And at what point do we limit free speech? At what point do we censor people just for having a different opinion? I think you can have a strong opinion, maybe an objectionable opinion, but if you're expressing it in a way that is not calling for murder or harm of other people, then really I hope that we could accept that. But as I say, I don't know what he's said, so maybe he went on a completely anti-Semitic rant, and in which case maybe it's justified that his channel's gone. But what a waste of probably about 10 years or so of material. And who knows, maybe this channel will go one day. Maybe a slip of the tongue for something I will say, or something you lot will say in the comments, or something will happen, and this Lessons for Life train that is firmly on the tracks will be derailed, and the channel will be gone. And we'll just have to accept that. But hey, we'll have to keep the memories. And before, he was almost anti-West rather than anti-Jewish. I thought possibly 33X. Yeah, he certainly had a different spin on it. And Pleb Enforcement is saying, did you check out Swilliamism? Yes, I did. And upon checking him out, I realized that I had visited that channel before. And he's a youngish guy, English guy, right? And it seemed like he hadn't posted some content for a while. But yeah, very good channel. I like the channel. Good recommendation. And we should always, it's good to share different channels. It's amazing the type of people you see who crop up on other channels that you've watched. And you kind of discover them independently, but then you'll find them on each other's platform. The likes of the Richie Allen Show. That's a great, I mean, that's a radio show in and of itself. Richie Allen, based out of Manchester, a guy from Waterford in the south of Ireland. Really switched on guy. Many of the guests that he has had on his channel, including Morris at one point, I was surprised to spot Morris on there. It's like seeing a teacher from school in the supermarket when you spot one YouTuber on another YouTuber's channel. And Syrian girl, another independent YouTuber that does what it says on the tin. She pitched up on Morris's channel. Even the great Sheikh Imran Hussein, this Islamic scholar who specializes in end times, wound up talking to Morris, which I thought was amazing. And Pleb Enforcement is saying the best talk show on YouTube at the moment is Academic Agents Unpopular Opinions. I will check that one out as well, definitely. But there are so many. And George Galloway, who I see quite regularly, pitched up on the Richie Allen show, quite reluctantly. And it broke my heart to hear Richie Allen, who I'm very fond of, being so critical and almost downright rude. He's a bit of a grumpy old man sometimes, is Richie Allen, but being really, really scathing of George Galloway just because he's a politician and they're all the same. And the same with Jeremy Corbyn. He's very, very negative about Jeremy Corbyn, says terrible things about him. Pleb Enforcement saying, I see George down Portobello, quite brilliant. Please, if you do see him, mention me and mention this channel, and hopefully the penny will drop. That would be it. See, it's great to network. There you go. Like minds. I mean, obviously, if you've got similar opinions, great minds think alike, and like-minded people will congregate together. I guess it shouldn't be a surprise, but it's always a pleasant surprise when it happens. And yes, Richie Allen, very scathing of Jeremy Corbyn, but very pleasant about and towards his brother, Piers Corbyn, the weather expert, whom he's had on the show, and must be very, I don't know, maybe Richie Allen just doesn't give a damn and he just tells it like it is, and it is what it is. But I met Piers Corbyn at a George Galloway event at the Irish Centre in Camden. It was a talk about Fidel Castro. Met Piers Corbyn there. He was very, very friendly, very lovely chap. Then I heard him on the Richie Allen show, and then I met him again in Speaker's Corner. And I said, oh, good to see you again, Piers. I heard you on the Richie Allen show. That was really great. And he said, yeah, I love going on that show. So it all ties in. We're all trying, I think, and this is the shame when people like Richie Allen are critical of George Galloway, because we're all kind of pulling in the same direction. And if we get into bickering and calling each other names, it's not really going to help. But I think Richie Allen, who I discovered through David Icke, there's another name that crops up in a lot of places. And Richie Allen, originally Richie Allen's radio show would say in association with davidicke.com. Now he's not saying that anymore. And I don't think it's because they've fallen out, but maybe he just wants to distance himself from David Icke. I can't imagine why. But for example, I'm a big fan of David Icke. I'm a big fan of George Galloway. But as George Galloway says, God preserve us from David Icke. He thinks David Icke is an absolute lunatic, which everyone did in the 80s, and still until he started being proven correct on so many things, not least of all the Jimmy Savile abuse scandal and various other similar scandals that he's been calling out for years and accusing people publicly who could have sued him had they dared, but never did. So George Galloway, perhaps rightly so, feels that he has to distance himself from David Icke, but the pair of them wind up on the Richie Allen show, and I like them all, even if they disagree with each other. Even Jeremy Corbyn, who I was a big fan of, who I was desperate for him to be what he said he was, and I've been a little bit disappointed by him, but it's like your football team. You still want them to win. And Pleb Enforcement is asking, have I watched any Graham Hancock? And I can't say I have. Yeah, that's another. I'm going to look again through the chat and go and check out all these names and channels that people are mentioning. So yeah, it would be great one day to chat to some of these names on the channel, and maybe tie it all together. But definitely check out the likes of Syrian Girl, Richie Allen, George Galloway, Piers Corbyn, the weather expert. Pleb Enforcement is saying bit esoteric but interesting. I love esoteric, and if you want to go esoteric, I recommend Michael Tsarion. That's Tsarion, Tsarion. It's a Russian name, but he's an Irish researcher who is an expert on esoteric history and the occult and mythology. 33X is saying Wogan destroyed David. No one ever took him seriously. Yeah, that's Terry Wogan, who famously said, David, they're laughing at you. They're not laughing with you. Now that's my Terry Wogan impression. Good old Terry, may you rest in peace. Pleb Enforcement saying, you need a more lively background. Looks like you're in an asylum. Well, yeah, maybe I am. And if someone escapes from the local insane asylum, how do you know it's not you? And Jordan M is checking in and making me crack up, saying, "You Muslim yet?" Not yet, Jordan M. But it is only 12:15 at night. Give me some time. Jordan M's a funny guy. I will extend the same question to you, Jordan. You still Muslim? I'm sure he is. He's a man of strong faith. Good to see the Speaker's Corner crowd checking in. I've not been to Speaker's Corner for a while, and Jordan M saying, "Alhamdulillah, that is a sign that he is still under the fold of Islam." Good news there. Yeah, I've not been to Speaker's Corner for a while, and I won't say I miss it. There are people that I miss, but the atmosphere, I don't miss it that much, if only the people could we should have a get together. I think at the end of the year, we should have a winter festival party, all get together. Jordan M is saying Speaker's Corner is like a weird addiction. Yeah, there you go. We said it. This feels like Speaker's Corner addict anonymous. My name's Julian, and I'm addicted to videotaping myself in Speaker's Corner. Yeah, it's a strange place. Love it, hate it. Yeah, I wasn't, when I was going week after week after week, I wasn't really thinking about whether I liked it or not. I was just going and banging out the material. Let's do another video. Let's get another intro. Let's get another episode. But when you take time out from something, life is very habitual. And I'm not a Muslim, but I can imagine when you start praying and people think 5 times a day, that must be impossible. But once you get into it and you're just in that rhythm, you probably just go with the flow. But if you fall off, like you fall off the wagon, and I've fallen off the Speaker's Corner wagon and I missed it a couple of weeks because I was away, and I had a bit of a kickboxing and MMA competition to do. Oh, silver and gold. Thanks for asking. I just had, I lost the rhythm, and now I'm kind of like, can I be bothered to go on Sunday? Pleb Enforcement is giving me some sound advice. Your channel needs more chaos. A little leaf from the book of Modine. Dash a sprinkle. Yeah, but I can't do Modine. I can't be only Modine can do what Modine does, and to go a little bit into the boxing analogy. Anthony Joshua, who lost to Andy Ruiz, and was then criticised and told that, oh, you were too big, you were too muscle bound, you were too much of a powerhouse. He's now hit the gym with a different training regime and shaved quite a few pounds off. He's looking quite slim. He's given in to the people advising him, and he's trimmed himself down. But as Tyson Fury said, maybe you should do what you do best. You can't turn a bull into a horse. Jordan M, we're really having a therapy session now about Speaker's Corner. I often go home wondering why I went, oh man. It's funny because it's true. It's funny because it's true. Jordan M is really, really cracking me up here. God, some people go to the bookies. I go to Speaker's Corner. And 33X is saying very unique people there indeed. Yeah, unique individuals. And Jordan M is saying pleb enforcement, hi Banksy. Is this a hidden identity being revealed there, or have I missed something? And pleb enforcement is saying Muslims love accusing me of being people. It's really quite funny. Well, pleb enforcement, we don't know who you are, but we've never seen you and Banksy in the same place. Very funny. Jordan M is emphasising pleb enforcement. I can't speak for others, but I know who you are. We know who you are. God, bickering going on in the chat. That's all good. Yeah, Speaker's Corner. Will I be back? Yeah, probably. Like the guy who says I'm never drinking again after a heavy night on the tiles, and then he's back at it again. But look, it's been great to go off at a tangent and talk about these things. I'm trying to think, was there anything else in the news that I wanted to sum up? Not really. I'm tempted to go live tomorrow on the anniversary of 9/11 and just talk about what people remember. Going a little bit into the conspiracy theory. And Jordan was saying, I always say I'll never go again. See you Sunday. Yeah, see you Sunday. I'll try not to burst out laughing. So yeah, I think tomorrow night we'll do a 9/11 special. I want to get into the conspiracy theory, all the different conspiracy theories, even the ones that contradict each other, even the crazy ones like it was all just a hologram, a hallucination, there were never any planes. And Jen Wallace is asking, what time do you think? Well, let's go for 11 minutes past 9. That's nice and easy to remember. Yeah, we'll do 9/11 at 9/11, and we'll go into the conspiracy theory. We will go into the remembrance. I don't want to make it into a joke because obviously thousands of people died that day, and it is an absolute tragedy, as was the madness that ensued, the invasions of other countries justified by this new Pearl Harbor, as it was described. And funny enough, they said that they needed a new Pearl Harbor not long before that. So whether or not it was planned, whether or not it was an inside job or a controlled demolition or any of these buzzwords that we now associate with the conspiracy theory, it was certainly a very convenient event. And Jen Wallace is describing it as the Pearl Harbor of our day. And 33X is saying, dude, no one thinks planes were holograms. Yes, they do, 33X. There are some people out there who, rightly or wrongly, think that the planes were holograms. Or is that just disinformation? Is that just people adding rubbish conspiracy theories into the perhaps truthful or slightly truthful ones just to muddy the water. We don't know. And Jordan M is saying, I've heard people blame it on the Jews. Yes, and you're right to laugh at that. It's very sad when anyone blames anything on the Jews or the Muslims or the anything else. I mean, you can't, and that's not how these things work. And just because the people involved were Muslim, if they were, it doesn't mean that the Muslims did it any more than the Christians did the invasion of Iraq. And Pleb Enforcement is mentioning laser beams. On that note, I will bid thee all a very good night or good morning, depending where you are in the world. And join me tomorrow night, 11 minutes past 9, for the 9/11 special, and we'll really get into it. This has been Lessons for Life. Thank you very much for tuning in. We'll do it all again soon. We were here. We're gone. Laters.